Welcome everyone to 121 in Flux. I am Peter, and joining me on this special edition, David has chosen to grace us with his appearance.
I'm so happy to be here, Pete. Thanks for having me.
Okay, I feel like we have to give context and explain why this is happening.
Is this not a normal thing for you?
Reviewing the 50 Shades of Grey trilogy? No,
okay.
Nothing about this is normal. I mean, I don't usually review 3 movies in one episode for a start.
Fair.
That's a regular number 1. 2 is, why did I watch the 50 Shades of Grey movies? Okay, so for people who follow the live streams, they'll know that there's sometimes goals to watch bad movies, and there was a goal for the first one several months ago. Then there was a goal for the second one, and then for the third goal there was kind of an added stipulation that not only would I have to watch the third movie, that I would review it, and David for some reason volunteered.
For some reason, this is the highlight of my week.
To be the co-pilot, if you will, and that weird tiny little plane they go flying in the first movie,
the glider.
Yeah. David is the co-pilot in the little glider of this review. So this is what we're doing. So this is going to be a review of the 50 Shades movie trilogy. Sadly, I have seen the first 2 of these twice now.
Same here, because of the exact same reasons as you.
Yes, because I already did them on the stream months ago, and then I had to watch them again because it had been too long. I wasn't going to remember things, and then I watched the third movie for this. So
yeah, honestly, I went into rewatching these and I completely forgot Mr. Grey's first name. I was like, it's something, whatever.
I think it's Christian.
It's Christian. It's Christian and Anastasia.
But I if you'd asked me before I rewatched them, I would have sworn it was Sebastian. I would have sworn.
I mean, yeah, I don't know where that's flipping something in my head too, but I don't know why.
I don't know where it comes from, but I could have sworn it was Sebastian. Background for what this is: obviously, it's based on a series of books. Same titles of the movies, I believe: 50 Shades of Grey, 50 Shades Darker, and 50 Shades Freed.
Yes.
The books started originally before there were books. They were actually fan fiction based on Twilight.
Which is really, I mean, I don't want to skip ahead too much, but it's super obvious in the first movie that that's what it is, and then it just kind of tapers off from there.
Well, I think it probably makes sense that only the first book, or some of the first book, was written as Twilight fan fiction. I assume that the later stuff, when it got popular as its own thing, and was going to be, and they knew it was going to be turned into a bit of books, and they had to sell it without copyright issues. I'm assuming the later stuff was written without it tying into Twilight's origin.
I actually did some research on that, and I know the exact point, and I can point exactly where when we get to it, that the author knew that it was going to become a book series, that it was going to be published.
Right. Okay.
So it's later than you think.
Oh, really? Is it in the first movie?
No, actually.
Is it in the
Not
second?
even close. It is. I'll just straight up say it. It is the third act of the third movie where they just wrap up everything.
The third movie?
Yep. It was the exact point was where she gets the phone call for the hostage situation.
Don't just say hostage situation. I'm still laughing at that. Do you know what? I watching the third movie for the first time today is that I was just painfully bored throughout the vast majority of it. But there's a moment where very suddenly there's a hostage situation where I just burst out laughing because, wait, what are they doing? Why is there a hostage situation in this movie all of a sudden?
Exactly. I mean, I don't want to jump straight to the third movie, but that was honestly my thoughts of 2 straight movies of all right, I guess, sure, fine, whatever. And then all of a sudden it's like, you better bring me $5 million in 2 hours or I swear to God, I'm going to slit this throat. And it's like, what is going on? Did I change the channel?
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, I'll just say there's going to be spoilers. We don't care about spoiling this trash.
Not at all.
We'll get into what it is and so on and so on. So, yeah, it was fan fiction based on Twilight, and it's very much, this dominant man with this meek woman who, and he's filthy rich. He's like this rich bachelor who's 27 years old. He's a billionaire, and he's perfect, but he's also into kinky shit. He's got a playroom. He likes to spank and, you know, a bit of sexual torture, all that sort of stuff, right? That's what he's into. And, you know, Twilight was already like, and this is very fresh in my mind because I also watched the third Twilight movie this week for another reason.
Because you wanted to, obviously.
No, it wasn't that. It definitely wasn't that. And Twilight does have this problem where you can kind of feel like the writer is writing it because they have this fantasy, and Bella is a character to just be them in this situation. And one of the things I was really feeling in that third movie is that there's never really an arc to Bella. It's just she wants this thing, she keeps wanting the thing, and it's going to keep going until everyone gives in and gives her the thing. And fantasy fulfilled. And it's not really a good story because of that, right? Regardless of whether or not you agree with the fantasy, you're into it, and that's your thing, or whatever. I feel like, you know, watching this, like, all throughout all three movies, there's just moments where it's like she's dazzled. Like, even in the third, there's a moment in the third movie after they've got married where they've left the wedding and they pull up on a runway next to a private jet, and she looks at it and goes, "You own that?" And I'm like, Anastasia, why are you still surprised at this point?
Here's the thing. I have so many problems with that marriage, like, at every point of it. Like, that, okay, so maybe like 2 scenes later from that, they have this whole scene that is brought up and dropped as quickly as it's brought up, but it's, will she take Christian's last name?
Oh, yes, of course.
These are things that you discuss well before you get married.
Oh, like having kids, for example.
Which is another scene that they bring up. Like, it's so incredible to me. Had half the conversations they have, and this led to a bit of research I did. In the books, at least, they have like dates ascribed to things.
Oh, really?
They have actual literal, like, how long time has passed. The amount of time between the engagement at the end of the second movie to the marriage that opens the third movie is quite literally 6 weeks.
Do you know what's so funny about this is that the conversation about kids as well, it's like, it's clearly a subject that has never even been slightly touched before now.
No, not at all.
Her reaction to it, because, you know, she cracks a joke about being pregnant, right? And she's not even like, she's not even trying to like put out a feeler or anything. She just cracks a dumb joke while she's making dinner, or while they're having dinner, and he has this look of horror in his eyes, and she's like, "Wait, you look like you just were ready to throw up there. Do you not want to have kids?" And I'm like, "Dude, what? You didn't ask this before you got married? This seems like a pretty important subject to talk about."
I have a feeling that they just, like, they had the engagement, and then all of a sudden Christian was just out of the country for like 6 weeks. And then he came back and it's like, "All right, time to get married." And they just did it. And then all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, right, we had a bunch of plots going on in our lives. What happened to that Jack Hyde guy?"
We'll get to him. Don't worry, we'll get to those plots. I have a lot of thoughts on the plots, but I mean, the core relationship between these two characters, right, which is the entire premise of this entire story, because there isn't really much of, like, because especially in the sequels, I really felt this in the sequels, because the first one, at least, they're meeting each other for the first time. It's their first encounters. It's them getting to know who each other are. So we're getting her reactions to what he's into, and that he likes to do all this spanky shit and blah blah whatever else. And so it's like, okay, there's kind of a story to the first one because of that, because it is about them meeting each other. It's not very good, and they have no chemistry. Like, it is insane how little chemistry these two have with each other. But But let's ignore that for a start. But on some fundamental level, there's a story in the first one because it is the first time they're seeing each other and falling for each other and all that. Once you get to the second movie, the second and third movie is a series of really weird little mini plots that overlap a bit here or there, and there are some that are sort of split up, so they sort of like run throughout the movie. But it's a series of things that just happen. There's not. I think, and you know, I said this on Twitter, and Tim, you know, cracked a joke and said, "Oh, how dare movies have things happen?" As you know, right? He's being pedantic because he thinks he's funny because he's Tim.
Tim's hilarious, but continue.
I mean, he is hilarious, but I'm not going to give him that satisfaction, David. Right? But obviously, the better way to describe what I mean by that is that when I got to the last 10 minutes of this third movie, and this was true of the second movie as well, the first time I watched it, there was nothing like 10 minutes before the end of the third movie or the second movie that makes it feel any closer to the ending than you were when you were 10 minutes into the movie. It still feels the exact same. It doesn't feel like there's... You know, when you're watching a movie normally, you've got momentum and you ramp up and you sort of reach a crescendo. And there may be a bit of an epilogue at the end, but the epilogue even still feels like you're coming down after the high of the ending and you're just kind of like saying goodbye and you're doing... You know, that's how a movie's typically structured. You have...
Yeah.
You know, roller coaster. I mean, it goes up and down a little bit, and you know, if you're really getting the nitty gritty. But as an average, you're just going, boom, 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 third act, and then have a little bit of epilogue just to wrap things up. And you have it. There's a feeling you associate with that journey, and where you feel at the start when you're introducing things, you're introducing your themes of your story. When you're at the end and you're sort of wrapping things up. Other than the fact that there's a montage right before the end of the third movie.
God, that montage.
There is nothing that told me that this feels like the end of a movie. It was just, oh, we're done with all the plots we had now. So, now we go. So, I mean, the first one is kind of like that as well to an extent, but it's really 2 and 3 that feel like that the entire way through.
I mean, I agree, but at the same point, the first movie, it feels like they only have that up until the point where they start doing the sex contract negotiation.
Sure.
And then as soon as they get to that point, the rest of the movie is like, will I? Maybe. And then Christian just keeps coming back of like, oh, I'll never do anything until you sign that contract. And then he immediately does something. And that happens about 4 times. And then the movie just kind of stops.
Yes.
So, and that's like, it's, I think the best point, because I was watching the second one with a friend of mine. And it came to the end of the second movie, and she hands over that little light up keychain that says yes on it. Obviously, a yes for the proposal. But I just joked that, yes, Christian, I will sign your contract. Because they still hadn't resolved that. It still wasn't fixed.
I think there is a moment early on in the second movie where I think they're having dinner. Because this is the thing, the first movie ends with her walking out because, you know what, he's too extreme. She can't bear with it. She can't just be a sex slave to him. She wants a real relationship. And she walks out. That's the cliffhanger at the end of the first movie.
Yes.
The second movie, he's won her back in like 5 minutes. Like, it's
not even. The order of events was he's sending a bunch of like flowers. Then her friend has a gallery that is a surprise, all photos of her.
Yes.
He buys all the photos of her.
Oh, let's just put this out. Is that her friend says, oh, someone just bought all 6 photos. And we're like, I wonder who that could be.
And then just standing in the gallery, Anastasia, come back to me.
And they go for dinner. They
go for dinner. And then the entire conversation basically boils down to, you know how I was in the first movie? I don't want to be that anymore. I want you. And then the next 2 movies are just them progressing back to the point where he was who he was in the first movie. Although now he's learned something, I guess.
Think technically that conversation is where the contract is thrown out. It's like, oh, no contract anymore because now we're going to be a regular couple.
Yeah, they explicitly said the point. I will give them credit. This carries over the next 2 movies of it being there's no punishment stuff, which is part of what the contract was it being a reward and punishment based system. I grant them that 100%.
The fundamentals that all good marriages are based on.
Yes, exactly. However, by the time they get to the end, in the third movie specifically, they bring it back up. She's being punished because she lied to Christian about going out with friends or something like that. And she brings up, like, that was punishment. You said we wouldn't be doing that anymore. But then they just, again, drop it. They say they had a conversation. He says, I'm sorry. They hug. And then, hey, honey, would you like to go to Aspen? And I'm just, nothing here is resolved in terms of any, like, if I'm sorry is enough to resolve it, then fine, that's great. But it's not good for a movie's sake because that's not doing anything. That's not keeping the ball rolling here.
Yeah, just so that's again back and track to the start of the story, just to set up some of the context for people who don't know any. Like, they have a vague idea of 50 Shades because it's in pop culture. They know it's about someone who's into kinky shit. So Anastasia is a college student in the first movie, and I'm pointing that out because the level of success she has in her career by the third movie is ludicrous. But more on that later. So. And her roommate / friend, is supposed to be interviewing Mr. Grey, and but she's sick. She's got a cold, so Anastasia's going to fill in. She's giving her some questions in a notepad. She's going to go and ask some questions. No big deal. And the entire movie is designed to show that she is this meek, timid person, right? Because she walks into Grey's company, and every woman specifically who works there are all in high heels, they're all in tight dresses, they're all supermodels, right? He only hires stunning looking women. That's his whole thing. And she's got like a cardigan or something on, and she's kind of embarrassed, and she's shuffling through, or shoulders all huddled up.
She's the before picture of Anne Hathaway in every Anne Hathaway movie.
And for some silly reason, she trips through the door on her entrance into his office.
God. I had completely forgotten about that until the montage at the end specifically brought it back up, and I was like, oh, right, that happened.
I think I remembered this because I think I watched someone's review or reaction or something to the first movie, and I had forgotten a lot of these scenes, so the trip itself really stuck out to me as being, oh yeah, that was a really stupid moment. Right. And this first encounter, this is the first time they meet, and I'm not going to try and talk about every scene in detail like this, but I think this is important because it's the first time they meet. This is your two leads meeting, and he is this. So everything about the characters is really just like too perfect, right? He's this 27-year-old handsome billionaire who's single. Like, and everything about this is a fantasy because it's constantly just him being like, oh, I own this plane, this helicopter, this restaurant, I can fly this plane, I can fly this helicopter. Oh,
of course.
It's do you know in like Inception when I can't remember the character's name, but he turns around and goes, I bought the plane, right? Or sorry, I bought the airline.
Yeah, right.
When he turns around and says that, right? That's effectively like just constantly what Christian Grey is in this movie. He's constantly, he literally buys the company in the second movie that she's got a job at, and then he owns the overall company that she's like several levels down.
Yeah, I think the running gag was, I'm your boss's boss's boss.
Yes. So it just like everything about it, because there were so many moments, and it's really, see, when you watch the three of them in a close proximity, you really notice just how often it'll cut to a pop song as like the camera swoops into the boat they're on, or the helicopter they're on, or the car they're driving in, and it's like, look at how magical all of this is. She's living in a dreamland. It's every girl's, like, it's basically the princess fantasy that some prince comes along and takes a liking to you and falls in love and brings you in, and all of a sudden all of this stuff is also yours. That that's the fantasy.
I have no problem with that in a romance novel setting. Like, that is perfectly acceptable for and adapting it to screen, fine, if that's how you want to do it. My problem comes from the idea that Anastasia is supposed to be our audience character. She's supposed to be the person that we relate with, and we're the person that we're seeing this through. But she has absolutely no agency of her own. Throughout all three movies, there is nothing. The most that she ever says that she wants are things in terms of like, oh, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that. And then Christian tells her, no, you can't do that. She puts up a little bit of a fight. Christian may give in and give her something, but then she just ends up not doing it. And that happens like 20 times over the course of three movies. Like, the one that stands out for me is, I think in the second movie, she calls and says that she needs to go to New York for a business thing that she just found out about. And they have a whole argument about it of like, can I go? Will Christian let me? Blah, blah, blah. And in the end, Christian subsides and says, well, why don't we both go to New York? We'll make a couples thing out of it. And she's like, that's perfect. That's exactly what I want. Smash 2, next scene, she tells her boss that she can't go to New York. We just established that everything here is hunky-dory and good. And then it's like, actually, that plot wasn't going to go anywhere. So we're just going to go somewhere else real quick, because don't worry about it. Everything that Anastasia wants up until I think probably the second half of the third movie is just completely fluid. It all depends on whether or not she's supposed to be standing up to Christian at that moment, or if she's supposed to be subservient to him. And I don't, in the way of a character, that's not satisfying for me. I would like to know the character that I am supposed to be connecting to. Like, what do they want? What do they want to happen? Well, the only thing I know is that she wants Christian. Well, and even then, by the end of the movie, does she?
The other thing about the fantasy, though, of course, is that he has this, like, darkness, this problem that can be fixed, right? That's the other part of the fantasy, is that he does have one really bad thing about him, but I can fix that. I can be the person to fix that, right? And that's fine and well. And I mean, the story wouldn't appeal to me, right? You say, as a trashy romance thing to appeal to its core audience, fine. But all my problems come back to it's not structured like a story because the character doesn't really learn anything. And the closest thing that's supposed to be there as an arc for the whole story is the idea that Christian himself is supposed to get over whatever trauma he has and become like a more full-fledged person by the end, so that he's not, haunted by the birth mother who was a crack addict
yes.
put him up for adoption back when he was a kid, or died and he went for adoption, whatever the sequence of events were.
Whatever happened, he had some parental issues that never quite got resolved.
And it feels like such an afterthought, like in the grand scheme of the plot, where it just kind of comes up randomly here or there when it's relevant, when they want to bring it up. Because for the most part, all the author of the book, and then in turn the movie, because she had a lot of control, I believe. I actually was going to bring that up. Of the first movie was directed and written by just completely like actual film people, and I think it shows. But when it got to the second movie, director was just some, like, he did a lot of TV work, but the screenwriter, the only credited screenwriters on both of the second and third movie are E.L. James herself and her husband. So this did not go through more than one draft, guaranteed. I'm just imagining what their married life is like.
I have to imagine at this point either they're all in on the kinky stuff or they never want to see it again.
It just, like I say, there's no proper structure to anything, especially in the second and third movie. And like you say, the first one had actual filmmakers trying to turn it into something. I mean, I don't think they succeeded in making it appeal to anyone who wouldn't appeal to anyway, but there's at least more of an actual movie kind of there compared to the second and third. But anyway, to bring this all back around, so I want to talk about the characters' relationship, right? That starts with their first meeting, where there's zero chemistry. Like, immediately she starts saying dumb things, like she asks him if he's gay. Right, that pops up. The moment that really stuck out to me is a line of dialogue where he talks a lot about his work and what he does for business and blah blah blah, and then she has just a general question of, do you have any interest outside of work, any hobbies, anything like that? And Christian, not disguising that this is basically just, softcore porn for a certain demographic, looks at her dead in the eye and says, I pursue certain physical pursuits.
Is it hot in here? God.
And it's just and I think that's the moment where you realize, okay, this is just kind of going to be trashy, right? That's what this is. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, but even trashy stuff can still function with some basic fundamentals of a movie.
Oh yeah.
Or storytelling, I guess, rather than a movie. But
yeah. So
that's missing. And then from that point on, like, the relationship is, as far as being a healthy, like, portrayal, because I mean, to sort of take this, right, and say, okay, what's the good version of this relationship? Well, the good version of this relationship is that you actually have a well-written drama about him actually having problems and a lot of his aggression and weird sexual desires, going back to his childhood trauma and his parental issues. Like, you actually do a movie where he does actually break down, and she is able to kind of make him unlock some of that trauma in a way that no one else has ever done, because they have a genuine connection and there is growth over the course of the three movies, right?
Right.
And that could be something. Or even before I get to that, let's say a good, because I can give you a good version of a very similar story, right? So
Love
much
to hear
so, in fact, that the main character in it is Mr. Grey. That's his name, and it was made long before 50 Shades of Grey was ever a thing. It is a movie called Secretary, starring Maggie Gyllenhaal and James Spader.
I remember that. I never saw it, but I remember it coming out.
And it is a great movie about a very timid woman who discovers that she's into some kinky shit with this boss. I mean, it's James Spader, who tends to be in kinkier movies, right? But here's the thing. James Spader actually has intensity. He actually has this awkwardness to him that feels really weird. And, you know, he's got a presence, something that I don't think Christian Grey has in any of these movies, right? Do you know what this is? This is the fantasy. Oh, I want the rich bachelor who has a weird dark side, but I want him to be a really generic handsome man. No, I don't want him to be weird.
Oh well, yeah.
Whereas James Spader is a bit weird. Like, he's got a bit of a weirdness to him as well, so it works.
Yeah.
It's like,
I mean, if you had, especially with Christian Grey, I mean, not to say this is 100% true of everybody, but if you have that much deep-seated trauma that is like controlling this entire aspect of your life, you're not just going to be totally normal in every other aspect of your life, especially not to the point where he is. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be unpacked there, but everyone's just like, no, Christian, he could literally buy you right now if he wanted to. He's just that successful.
he's the best. He's the best at everything.
Of course he is.
Do you know what it is? It's the, you know, in The Room, Tommy Wiseau, his character Johnny, he's just the best at everything. He's the best at work. He's doing good. He's got a big bonus at the bank. He's great. He's the best boyfriend. He's the best neighbor. He's a guardian to this child who apparently lives on his own or something next door. Whatever it may be. He's the best at everything, so that we feel sad for him when his evil fiancée betrays him, right? It's kind of the same thing here in the sense that just instead of it being about himself, it's the fantasy of this perfect person. He's the best at everything. He's just the best. And that is why he's so appealing, and you know.
Yeah, and again, I think that because he is the best at everything. It goes into that issue that I have where all the scenes just, if Christian does something, like genuinely does something wrong, either Anna just doesn't care, like she just accepts, like, okay, that's whatever. I go back to the changing the name thing in the third movie, because that was just a temper tantrum. He literally walks into the room, says like, there's no Mrs. Gray working at this place because your email hasn't been changed.
At our work, no less, right?
Exactly.
She's at work. She's talking to Superman, right? Tyler Hoechlin is in there, like, talking about his book, which is doing very well apparently, and she's saying, "Hey, we want a second book." She's doing really good. You know, they're making money. She's doing really good at her job, which is you know, a bit fast forwarded if I do say so. But ignoring that for the minute, right? And Christian storms into her office and demands to speak to her. I mean, obviously he's civil enough about it in public, but it's got that very passive aggressive things like, I need to speak to
that's
Mrs.
not even
Gray.
passive aggressive. The dude puts out his hand for a handshake and he's like,
I suppose I'll shake that if that's the civil thing people do, but
you can tell he just wants to throw himself on the couch and be like, change your name.
It's not even that though. The argument itself boils down to like, why have you changed your name? What is this? And she's like, look, I'm known as Steel here. And I'm all I'm thinking of is Die Hard did this better. Gennaro and McClane was a better version of this scene.
But no, okay, so what I was saying was, though, either she just sweeps it under the rug, like that scene where she's just like, fine, okay, I'll change it, no big deal, whatever. Or when she finally does call him out on something that does go too far, all it takes for him is, I'm sorry. And then it's fine. It's whatever. There's no, like, period in between where it's like, oh, okay, well, that actually isn't enough. The only time that happens is at the very last scene of the very last movie. That's the only time. That's just to raise the stakes for the final encounter.
It's funny because
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, because, you know, when I've been talking about Twilight before, I've talked about how Bella's a really horrible role model for young girls because of, like, the way she obsesses over Edward, and the fact that, you know, in the second story she's literally willing to kill herself because that's better than not having the guy you want, and, you know, she's an awful role model. I actually think, in a weird way, in this it's kind of flipped, and the Christian is this awful role model for men, which admittedly isn't so bad because most men aren't going to want to watch this movie.
Yeah, fair.
But there is probably the flip side of that, is that maybe it's teaching a lot of potential. I mean, admittedly, I think the average age of people watching this are probably a bit older, but it could be a very poor message to, say, younger women who are, you know, late teens, early 20s, who are maybe seeing this as a joke because, oh, it's fun, let's go see the 50 Shades because it's kinky and might be sexy or whatever. And it's not a very sexy experience, that's why I put that out there. But maybe they go see
it. You would know watching all the unrated editions.
But yeah, they go see the movie and they're basically being told that this perfect man will do a lot of horrible things, but as long as he says thank you, and because he acts like he's a bit tortured, it's okay. You can forgive it. You can just forgive it, and it's all fine. So don't get me wrong, it's not as bad as Twilight in that respect, because Twilight, I think, is targeting young teenage girls, and it's teaching them maybe a lot of bad things about what your attitude should be to a lot of subjects. But I do think there's a little bit of that here with Christian, and that you're sort of like, yeah, that's like. Because that first movie especially, right? I can't even say the second and third are full of red flags, because at that point they're not red flags. They're just the whatever danger the red flags are warning you about are just happening in the relationship in the second and third movie. But that first movie is like, if you played a drinking game where you just had to drink, not even all the other rules, because I've seen drinking games for Twilight like being made up, and it's like every time she bites a lip, every time he says later's baby, everything, you know, all these different things that you could do it for, but it could just be the red flags. And the red flags alone would get you drunk. Because
the first movie is the danger cliff ahead sign. And at the very end of the movie, she like puts on the brakes, like she starts to brake, and it's like, okay, we're learning something here. And then as soon as the second movie starts, you see that she was only braking because she was meaning to go for the clutch so she could put it into sixth gear. That's the only thing that happened between those movies.
Yeah, because the ballsier ending of the story, honestly, if it wasn't just someone's fantasy, because that's what it is. This is the writer's fantasy that has been written, right? And it just feels that the entire time. So it feels so self-indulgent. Like, the more you go into it, the more self-indulgent it feels. But if it wasn't the writer's fantasy, the ballsy ending to the whole story would be them realizing they shouldn't be together, right? That would be the ending. I would call it the Rocky ending, right? This should not be her winning in the match at the end. It should be, no, I came this far, I learned a lot, he learned a lot, and we are both better people for it, but we should move on with our lives. Like, that should be the ending.
Like, in a world where it makes sense, yes, but in a romance setting, that is obviously not going to work. Like, they always had to end up together in some regard.
Yes, even though they had no chemistry, but yeah.
Yeah, but my primary problem in terms of the red flags and all that, and whether or not she's a good role model or not, I'm not sure if she's better than Bella, honestly, because at least Bella, it was a fantasy thing. Like, yeah, you could tell the girls, okay, don't go dating vampires and werewolves. It doesn't matter. But with Christian, that is genuinely a type of person that women can come across. That is a person who is out there, somebody who just like seeks for control and domination over their partners, and to romanticize that in the way they have, and to not show. And clearly, Anastasia has no idea what a proper like counter to that is, how to hold up mentally on the other side of that kind of relationship. So to just show someone who's very experienced in that world taking pretty much advantage of someone who's has no experience, it strikes me as possibly more damaging to play it off as an actual romance than Twilight ever could. If that makes any sense.
No, I kind of see what you're saying. I think
like the one scene that I think that can justify it is the contract scene, where they're sitting apart from each other on the table, going over the terms of the contract, and she literally has to ask for definitions for like half the words they're talking about.
This contract, again, context for everyone who's not seen or read. The contract is that before he enters into a sexual relationship with someone, he makes them sign a contract that specifically consents to a number of things that they might do. So, for example, she asks, what is anal beads? She asks, well, she doesn't ask what fisting is, she just asked for that to be scored out. But but they run down this list of things, and it's a very comedic scene. At least the intention is that it's funny. And I mean, I chuckled at a couple of the lines. I won't lie, it's hard not to see some humor in this like very serious meeting with contracts about sex. Of course, the whole idea, that he won't do anything without written consent. Like, on the one hand, you could say, well, he wants consent. Isn't that the gentlemanly thing to do? Well, yeah, but like the idea that you need it to be written is saying you have a lot of trust issues for a start.
Not only that, but just like already at that point in the story, he has had sex with her at least 3 times.
Yes, that is true.
Like, he's just breaking all the rules anyway. And I guess you could put that off as like, oh, well, he's so crazy about her and he's so whatever. Then ditch the whole contract thing.
Well, here's the thing, Dave. You see, she admits that she's a virgin in a scene, and you can practically see the boner in his eyes the second she says it. And that's the first time they have sex, is right after that.
Yeah, no, it is quite literally like 30 minutes, if even after that.
Yeah. Because they're sitting maybe at the piano, or maybe just at a table in his like penthouse, and they just immediately go and do that. But yeah, so that's why I describe some of the red flags, though, that are in that first movie in particular. Yes. So after they've had this meeting, he just shows up at her work randomly. She's working part-time at like a hardware store. And there's a lot of jokes here because he's buying rope and tape and other things. And he even like drops a line about, oh, well, I don't need overalls, I could just take my clothes off. And she's like, oh, your clothes off? Yeah. And it's an awkward moment, right? So red flag. Red flag number 2. They're not even dating yet. She's went out with her friends to a club or a bar, somewhere to dance, whatever. Right. And she gets drunk, and she's worked up the courage to call him because he sent her some books as a gift. And
well, no, you missed the scene in between here. The scene in between there was they went out for coffee, and then Christian decided that no, actually, you need to stay away from me. We can't be together.
That's because she says she's interested in romance, which is a pretty normal thing that most people are on some level interested in. And he's like, you want romance? You just want raw, angry, passionate sex? Well, in that case, I just can't do it. I'm not right for you. Which is tedious to sit through, because given the whole premise of the story, it's like, dude, we know that this is bullshit. We know that you're just going to change your mind a minute later, so there's no point. It's just tedious to sit through.
I mean, I'm okay with it if it's an interesting reason to change the mind, but literally there was no interesting reason. Because
she just calls him while she's drunk and says, I don't need the books, blah, 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 blah. And when he hears how drunk she is, and he's like, you've been drinking? He's like, where are you? I'll come and find you. And she doesn't even tell him. He just tracks her phone and shows up at the bar, and I'm like, okay, that's a red flag.
But here's the thing. The way they play that off, the one friend, I think it's Jose or whatever.
Yes.
Like makes a move on her, and despite her like very clearly being hesitant and not going for it, Jose keeps pushing. And therefore, Christian, when he arrives, he's not the stalker who just followed her into a club. He's the hero who broke up a potential sexual assault.
Yes, even though Jose for the rest of the trilogy is treated like he's just the kindest friend ever, who's stepping aside to let.
He's fantastic.
Yeah. So
I do love, though, every time that Jose is in a scene and then like something happens between Anna and Christian, they make sure to go to him and show the pain in his face.
He's not rich. He's not allowed a girlfriend.
Oh, God.
No,
I mean, you're right. Based off this story's things, that's the only people who are allowed to date.
Well, I mean, this is one of the problematic things of this, because he even says, I think he's got a line, he's like, I think it's the next morning, he says something like, do you have any idea how much danger you put yourself in last night by getting drunk in a public place? Right? But going back to this moment where they go out of their way to put her in this moment where her friend, who's clearly got a crush on her, that's established, in the few scenes they've had up until this point, goes in for a kiss and is a bit more, forward with it than they maybe should be.
Right.
But, this whole moment here is designed to justify Christian's belief that this is putting herself in danger, that she should not go with friends and get drunk, and this is, for the record, this is coming from someone who has never drank. I have never been drunk in my life.
Me neither.
And more to the point, the thought of going out to a club or a bar where people are just getting drunk and dancing sounds like living hell to me, quite frankly. So, right? So this is coming from me when I say this, that his attitude here and the message he's trying to get across is, I am so possessive that you are just putting yourself in danger, and I had to come and rescue you, proving that I am right. Every bit of messaging in this, and that the scene is trying to paint him as in the right for doing this, is problematic in a number of ways.
Yeah, but again, we brought this up in the beginning. all of this is still just Twilight parallels. Like all of this scene with the being nearly attacked is the exact same thing as when those 4 guys confronted Bella in the alley, and he showed up in his Audi to scare them away with his vampire magic or whatever. Like, it's still just doing the Twilight parallels at this point.
Oh, does that mean Jose's meant to be like Jacob?
Yes, actually, exactly that.
It's actually kind of amazing then how little like story he has then, because after this he's basically just dropped. Like, he's in the odd scene here or there.
I'm pretty sure that there was an interview at one point where E.L. James like confirmed that they were 100% Team Edward, and therefore Jacob was just he's a loser. He sucks. Get him out of here.
Well, what's funny is that in the third Twilight, I've not seen the 4th or 5th yet, so I can't comment on those. But by the 3rd, like, I don't know how anyone could be Team Jacob, because he does actually forcibly kiss Bella in that movie, and it's really like it's really you know, it's and then Bella breaks her hand when she punches him in her face, which is the funniest thing in the whole movie. But funny enough, that review's got out the same day as this, because that's also a Valentine's special, so you get a double dose. There's a little crossover between the two. So there's constant red flags throughout that first movie where she says she's, and they're already kind of dating at this point, to the point where she's going with him to like have dinner with his family, and they all get to meet her. We've not even mentioned his brother's dating her best friend now, and he's like the more fun-loving dude. Whatever.
No, it wasn't when they went to the club. There was some point where they met up though.
I think, was it the graduation? Because Christian went to speak at the graduation or something?
Yeah, that sounds right. It was somewhere around there. I love how that plot, because I don't want to bring it up again later, it's just an undercurrent throughout all 3 movies that like they're dating and they have like their own relationship problems and stuff like that. And then finally it all crescendos with he proposes to her in the 3rd movie.
After the tease that he might be cheating on her with this.
Right, which also goes nowhere. Anyway. But it's just...
Well, I think the idea is that he was planning engagement stuff with this other woman, so... Like, it's all resolved.
Oh, no,
because
that's clearly what it was. Yeah. But, like, from the sake of a movie, you cut that. Because it doesn't matter. It's not doing anything.
No,
the only thing that could, in any sense further, is if Anna had her own doubts about Christian's fidelity.
That was already solved, though.
But, it was totally done with. We were past that, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to talk about their relationship again.
But anyway, so back to this scene. So she goes to dinner with his family, right?
Yes.
And she casually mentions in this that she's not seen her mother, who lives in another state, in a while. She's going to visit her this weekend. And first of all, red flag number 1, Christian is seething because he's not heard about this shit. He's like, I didn't know about this. What are you doing? There's so many times in that first movie where I was internally going, oh, he doesn't like that. like I was thinking that so often throughout that first movie. But to the point where, so that's red flag number 1, is just his reaction to that, then him being disappointed at that and mad about it, and then him showing up in the state on a work thing so that he can be there. It's not like she's going to see a friend where, if you were a really paranoid, jealous like type, and like, okay, she's with her friends, they're going to go out and maybe meet people, maybe she'll meet a guy, I want to be there to police her. She's with her mother. Just typically people don't go and meet like potential partners when they're hanging out with their parents. It's not just not the climate for it.
But regardless of any of that, regardless of like whether she was telling the truth or whether she was lying, or if Christian's the jealous type, whatever, they aren't together yet. She has not. If the relationship in Christian's mind hinges upon whether or not she signs this contract, they are not in a relationship yet. They are not together.
By this point, they've had sex so many times. I think at this point, they might have even done some kinky shit in the red room.
I guess. It's just, I get so, because on one hand, Christian is so by the books about like everything he does. He wants that contract signed. He says this, he says that. He's very much like the punishment and reward system. He wants to do that, but then he immediately just gives in to his most base desires in terms of jealousy and protectiveness.
I think this is actually quite an accurate portrayal of men, in that we'll say a lot of shit, but the second we actually get horny, all of it's out the window. The willpower's gone. Like, it's gone. Right? Sex is on the table. Enough. It doesn't matter. Right? That's you.
Fair enough, but that doesn't make him any more appealing of a character. I don't want a dark reflection of my own gender portrayed against me.
Except he's perfect because it's easy for him to just be successful at everything.
Oh, of course.
Yes. So
I honestly do you remember at any point when they say what Grey Industries actually does?
The only thing I remember is that they're doing some charity work in Africa.
I remember that.
That's the only thing I remember them ever saying about what the company does.
And apparently they own a book publishing company, so...
Yes. I guess it's one of these corporations who just own a bunch of things in different fields. So they're just like this, like, you know, this parent company that just owns like tons of stuff. So therefore it's never talked about. That's the thing, like Anastasia's job, I feel, you know, obviously not in the first movie because she didn't have it yet, but in the second and the third movie, her book publishing job, I feel like I know quite a lot about that by the end.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I understand what she's doing to an extent, as much as I could without having worked in a place like that. I understand what her role is.
Yeah. I mean, she's just the fiction editor. She reads all the fiction books and says what gets by.
Yeah, well, the fact that she even has that job is ridiculous.
Yes, that is.
Like, she's literally the assistant to the previous fiction editor who gets fired. We'll get into why in a little bit. Yeah. And she's just offered the job because she says one smart thing at a meeting. And
okay,
then...
can I just, on that meeting, can I really like, I hate that scene so much. Because it just, everything, just, okay, if you had a scene where you had to have Anna prove herself, fine. I have no problem with the concept of that scene. But this particular one, it opens on a guy talking, saying, oh, we need to really double down on our established authors. That's how we're going to get new readers in. And then immediately afterwards, Anna just under her breath.
Let me pause you right there.
Yeah.
That sentence on its own. We need to double down on our established authors to get new readers. It already, like, he basically just opens. It's an open goal. He just like gives her the easiest thing to counter in the world.
Exactly. And so she just whispers under her breath, like, you need to do the opposite. And then the super manager, her boss's boss, chimes in, is like, do you have something to say, Miss Steele? And she just says literally just what E.L. James wanted to say when she was looking for publishers. Like, it's just her manifesto of, you need to focus on smaller ones, possibly internet writers, you know, people with an established fan base who are coming back to read my Twilight fanfic. I mean, whatever it is they're writing on a regular basis. And then the manager's just like, you make a good point. Maybe let's try that. And then the guy who spoke up the first time's like, what? What? And then as soon as they leave the room, she gets offered to fill the position that was open temporarily until she gets it permanently in the next one. But like that whole scene, just because it wasn't even a scene, it was literally just a platform for E.L. James' manifesto. That was then given to, like, just put in front of a crowd of idiots so they could be like, that's the smartest idea we've ever heard.
Anastasia's entire life has somehow just fallen into perfection in the space of a few months, because she was in college, right? She had never really dated anyone by the sounds of it. You know, she definitely didn't have sex, but I assume that by that she also didn't really have much of a relationship with anyone.
Not any serious relationships, no.
And then she within... I mean, I don't know how much time passes from like the start of the first movie to the third, but it didn't seem like that much time. And she is like got a job that would normally take people years to get to. She is married. She is a billionaire. she like everything. And then one final thing on that scene with the meeting is that the guy who's like her boss, who like sort of likes her idea, that actor was in Mr. Robot, and he was a complete shithead in that show. So I was expecting him to make a heel turn at any point, and he never does. But it's just because of what I've seen of him.
Okay, so I've got here the book timeline.
Right, go on.
According to the books, on May 9th, a Monday, Anna interviews Mr. Grey.
Yes, Monday's important. Yes, that's the important detail. What year?
So 1998, whatever. May 9th. May 9th is the important date here. And then we see here the marriage, the wedding, takes place on July 30th.
That's the next year?
The same year.
What?
May 9th to July 30th is the span of all of this action.
I thought you said there was 6 months from the
No,
end
I
of
said
the
6 weeks.
Oh, 6 weeks!
There were 6 weeks between the engagement to the wedding, which makes up the majority of their relationship out of all of this.
Wait a minute. So, right. So just to
you can ask as many questions as you want. It's not going to help.
Recap that for me again.
May 9th.
So May 9th was the start, and then you said the wedding was July?
The wedding was July 30th. The engagement was the middle of June.
So the entirety of the first and second movie takes place between May 9th.
Yep. And technically June 18th.
So just over a month.
Yep.
Is the first and second movie.
Yep. I mean, to be fair, this is the book timeline. So
I mean, there's nothing in the movie to suggest that's not accurate. So I mean,
I think that's worth like 12 red flags on its own right there.
Oh my, okay, that is wild. So yes, other big things from the first story that are probably worth mentioning is that he does go too far and spanks the shit out of her, which is kind of towards the end where she freaks out and says, no, that's the last time you ever do that to me again. This is not a relationship. This is your weird thing and I'm leaving.
Something was happening at work. He got angry and she's like, hey, I know you're angry, so why don't you like show me how bad it can get? Like, and then he does exactly what she asked, and then she leaves.
Yeah, she's like, take it out of my ass, and then he does, and then she gets upset.
Like, okay, so I don't know if this was a fan thing or if this was an actual thing that they tried to put forward, but I heard that the idea that the director screenwriter were trying to put forward for the end of the scene was that basically he starts off the scene saying, I'm going to whip you 6 times and you're going to count it off. And so he starts whipping. The idea that they put forward was that he was going to keep going. He was going to break that and go too far, and she was going to use the safe word and he was going to ignore it. Therefore, actually betraying trust and actually having a reason to be that upset. Of course, that's not what we got. What we actually got was he did exactly what he said he was going to do. He basically, honestly, I feel like the way they were doing it wasn't even like that bad, but that's my own personal thing.
I mean, yeah, that's a weird thing to say.
Yeah.
I haven't been present for a lot of spankings, but I will say that it didn't seem that hard to me.
When they show all of those things in the Red Room, I felt like that was the most tame on things that could still technically be considered out there.
Yeah, and because there's a joke in the third movie where he says, we're going to do this, and she go open that drawer, that's what we're doing, and she opens the drawer, and she looks and goes, really? And it just cuts away, and you never get to see what they did. And I'm like, did he have her screw up with a strap on or something? Like, what was the thing? What was in the drawer?
I don't know.
Don't tell us.
Christian Grey is into pegging. Confirmed.
I don't know, but so I don't really have much more to add on the first movie, I don't think, right? It's just
no, not really.
The biggest problem ultimately is that there's just no chemistry. Everything is red flag city, so I don't understand the fascination other than just, I guess she's attracted to him because he's handsome and he has a lot of money, right?
I mean, I can understand being attracted to someone that you know is wrong for you.
Sure.
Like, I can understand that setup, and I can also understand the entire romantic, like, just the physical lust side of it. I can understand that. My issues with the movie come solely from, like I said, once it hit that contract negotiation scene, it's like the movie just stopped. Like, nothing... There were entire scenes that were just entirely focused on, like, well, we could be doing something right now, but you haven't signed the contract yet. And it's like, then why am I watching the movie? Do something. And then that continues on for the next 2 movies until we hit the end of the third, and then all of a sudden it throws it into overdrive.
The question, why am I watching this, pops up often in my head as I am, and then I remember that partially you're responsible.
Oh, I'd like to consider myself mostly responsible.
So I have an answer to that question when I ask it.
And I do it because I'm bored on a Thursday night.
Yeah, I mean, you say the movie kind of stops there, but I would argue the entire series mostly stops there.
Yeah.
And then, because I think this is where we start talking about all the plot lines that are in the second and third movie, and just how wacky. I mean, I guess the one thing that's introduced in the first movie is that Christian learned all this from a mistress that he had when he was a teenager, who they refer to as Mrs. Robinson. That's not a real name, but that's what she calls her because, you know, referencing The
Her
Graduate.
name is Elena, I believe.
Yeah, Kim Basinger, who we don't see till the second movie, but that's who it turns out to be. And she was like this, like, you know, sexy older lady who seduced him when he was a teenager, and he was her submissive, and that's where he learned it all, and yada yada yada. And her reaction to this, especially when she sees her in the second movie, right? Because it's an early on thing. Because he's like, hey, we're going to this party, to this mass ball. I'm going to take you to get your hair done. I know we've put someone, and and it turns out that this Elena runs this salon, and he takes her there, and when she realizes that he's taking her to not only his ex, but the ex who sexually assaulted a child, effectively, because that's her reaction to it, right? Her reaction is, no, you were underage and she assaulted you. That's what happened, and you don't, you know, see it that way. And it's look, I think I can speak for most men, right? Well, at least straight dudes anyway, right? I mean, I'm sure gay dudes or, you know, whatever, have their own versions of this, but I feel like most straight guys growing up when they're teenagers will have some fantasies about an older woman, like, you know, seducing them and teaching them things and whatever else, right? Maybe the teacher fantasy.
It's the hot for teachers.
Yeah, or whatever. You know, it could be any version of that, right? You know, it's the MILF, right? American Pie gave it a name. It's the MILF, right? That is a thing, right? And there's nothing wrong with a fantasy, right? Yes. By and large, there's nothing wrong with the fantasy. As long as you know it's a fantasy, you accept it's a fantasy, you treat it as a fantasy.
But that's the key word. Treat it as a fantasy.
Right? That's fine. But this is treating that as, no, this actually happened to him. And Anastasia quite rightly says, no, you were assaulted by this woman and you're still friends with her. This is weird and you shouldn't be okay with this. So that becomes a subplot, and it's probably the longest running subplot in the movie because it's introduced early on and then is not paid off until, you know, she meets her at the party, she interacts with her in the bathroom and basically says, you're a monster, you assaulted him, and then it comes up again right at the very end because then she like outs her in front of Christian's mother, her you know, adopted mother, that is, obviously. And the adopted mother's like, you did what? You're my friend. You seduced my son when he was underage. Get out of my house, you bitch. Like, that's obviously that's her reaction. Yeah. Right. Because that makes sense.
I mean, it's I think it was also seeded in the first movie where he just mentioned how he did learn this stuff. So they did give it a little bit of seeding there. My issue with
that's how I opened it. That's because that is the one thing that is seeded in the first movie, whereas all of the other plots just feel these random additions.
Oh, they are horrible. But when it comes down to her character, I think it's a fine enough concept. The issue I have with it is just like she feels like the spirit of death, where like she only appears to only Anastasia throughout the movie, and it's always, I'm pretty sure, aren't both times in a bathroom as well? Like, she's constantly just like following around. It's just like, Christian's never going to love you. He's not capable of love. Break up with him. Break up with him.
No, the first time is. The second time is just in like a hallway in the mansion.
Okay. Yeah. Regardless, it's still just separated from everyone else, and she's just saying the same thing over and over again. And I honestly feel like she only exists not to have Christian have any sort of realization about how messed up it was. And as we see by the third movie, he didn't. But
no, because he goes back to her. He gets drunk and goes and talks to her when he's upset about something.
Exactly. But she only exists in this movie for the sole purpose of giving Anna a half-hearted arc of the first time she was too, like, she was like, no, I'm sure things are going to work out. But then in the very end, she's like, I'm going to throw a drink in your face. Psh, what of it?
So that's one plot in the second movie. Another plot in the second movie is she's got this new job at a book publisher. She's a secretary, or assistant, sorry, the correct term, for this dude who's right away, as soon as he's introduced, like, He's got a thing for her. You can see that he's kind of into Anastasia.
Oh, yeah.
And
Jack Hyde is his name.
Jack Hyde's the name of the character, and there's a couple of there's like another woman who works there who kind of gives a couple of glances when she catches him like eyeing her up. There's like another woman who is at a higher position now who comes in and like has a bit of a funny look when she kind of realizes that he's taken a liking to her, which becomes clear later that she was probably a previous assistant and therefore I'll just call it what it is, victim of his. And although I didn't remember enough that when she popped up in the third movie in a fairly big thing towards the end, I was like, who is this woman? What is she doing?
That's always the issues with these movies, is you got to figure out like what the balance for the secondary characters is going to be. And if you ever undershoot it, you're like, I'm sorry, have we met? It
took me so long to realize who this character was when she was like helping with the hostage situation. More than that
we're just gonna keep saying the hostage situation until it blows up into this thing.
And this so it's set up, and he's like jealous a couple of times because Anastasia cancels a work thing to go and be with Christian. He intentionally like talks her into going to a bar for a drink for briefly. It is what it is.
Well, it wasn't. I feel like the order of events there was he was basically laying down the moves, and then when the bar thing happened, Christian showed up to interrupt it the same way he did at the other bar thing. And after that scene, he just had a personal vendetta against Anna and Christian.
Yeah, and it's important to note that there's not a lot of scenes, right? Like I think there's like one scene where he gets mad at her and sort of accuses her of like resting on her laurels because she's technically now having sex with the boss's boss's boss, right? And then the scene where he actually tries to attack her feels like such a leap forward because he just sort of says, come into my office, and he shuts the door and he starts getting all, and he jumps from like a, I don't know what you like. I don't want to judge me for saying where it is in the scale, but he jumps from like a 4 on the he's maybe getting kind of problematic with the way he's like speaking to her to like a 12 in the space of like 5 seconds, where I think the line is he just suddenly goes, wait, why are you scared? Do you think I'm going to force you to F me? And I'm like, whoa, like just like
that was Turbo Drive. It was that and shutting the door.
Yeah, and he just he starts putting his arms up against the wall behind her so she feels trapped and so on and so on, and he gets close and he starts saying he jumps to, I'm going to make you come like you've never came before, and and it's just like, what is this? What is this random plot line that feels and it's funny is that this guy ends up being like the main villain for the third movie. And and I'm like, I didn't know we needed to have a main villain. This was not a movie that needed a main villain. This is not this is not what it is.
You say that, but by the time we hit the third movie, I'm so happy that there's some overarching thing with lasting consequences. Because it's just the other two movies are just like, okay, they said they're sorry and they're back together again. Great.
Well, that's the thing. At the very, very end, it teases that this character is going to be a problem again in the third movie. But in the context of this movie, it does actually feel like it's dropped very quickly because she knees him in the balls, she runs out, Christian sends in a security man, and we find out he's fired, and then it's like, oh, that's it, he's gone. Now, there is one moment at the very end of the movie where he's watching from a distance and like oh, he's planning something, he's being evil or whatever. But other than that, it's like, okay, that's that plotting done.
Yeah, pretty much.
Let's move on with our lives. And there's a lot of things like that in the second movie. I almost forgot to talk about the ex-submissive girl who keeps showing up early on, and this thing is completely resolved like maybe a third into the movie. Maybe halfway at a push, like it's like early-ish on.
Yeah,
it's not late in the movie.
Trying to think where it does get resolved, because it just there's like 3 points where I feel like it gets resolved, and then it just keeps showing back up again.
Yeah, basically this girl who looks a little bit like like she's got that look in her eyes, right? She looks a bit crazy.
Looks also a little similar to Anna.
Yeah, which that's the key thing is all of his exes are similar looking because they're all like his dead mother, which is.
The crack addict, to be specific.
Crack addict, yes.
Yes.
So she shows up to Anna, and then Christian sees her another time when they're both there, and then he finally confesses, like, oh, this is an ex-submissive, we split up because, she wanted more, I didn't, and she got a bit possessive and stuff. But I thought she moved on. She got married. He actually says that. I was surprised he said that. I was like, oh, did she? Okay.
Yeah, she got married, but then the husband died, and so she fell back in love with Christian.
So she keeps showing up, and then out of nowhere in the movie there is, and you know, I say out of nowhere because it feels like plot threads just get dropped and then come back. Like, do you know when you're watching anything else and it feels like, okay, there's like 2 or 3 plot threads and there's like a subplot that keeps coming back up. It feels like it's naturally weaving in and thematically ties into what's going on. So much of the plots in these 2 sequels feel so segmented and separate, as if you could almost just sort of rearrange it and have it be these like 20 or 30 minute like episodes.
I'm concerned that we haven't rearranged it into that. I mean, isn't that exactly what we've done? We just talked about the Jack Hyde episode.
That's true,
now we're talking about the Layla episode.
Did you write down our name? Because
no, actually, as I was looking through history, I unfortunately learned more names than I ever wanted to.
Because I could never have told you her name. Like, I'm impressed.
The helicopter's name is Charlie Tango.
Oh, more on that later. Like, this entire plot line, it just builds up to a scene where she somehow, well, she doesn't break into Christian's place because his place is like a fortress, right? But she does break into his car park where all his private cars are stored. Which that was another one of those moments, by the way, where Anastasia's like, "Which one's yours?" And he's like, "All of them."
All right, Christian, thanks.
But Christian, so she doesn't break into Christian's place, but she does break into Anna's place because she's still got her own apartment right now, and of course it's just a regular apartment. So she breaks in, she's got a gun, and so we have a scene where she's been held up at gunpoint by this crazy ex who's like just lost the plot, and then Christian comes in, and it somehow turns into a scene where Anna is concerned because of how submissive she is, and Christian's like, you know, you get down on your knees, put the gun down.
I was gonna say, you're stopping the best part. He uses his Jedi mind powers on her. I love it. He puts up the hand and he's like, "Give me the gun," and she just gives the gun, and I'm like, "Oh my god!"
But I mean, this should be another red flag. This I mean, it's a second movie, but this is the warning sign of like, this is what he's done to previous girlfriends. He has broken them down to such a point that they are responding to him like a dog.
Yes, but I read it a slightly different way. Pretty much the same reaction, though. It is a red flag for me, but it's more so in how I think the author sees anyone involved with the BDSM community, which is everyone involved who's like actually really into it has some level of like trauma. Like, they are broken people, and it's a not so great way of viewing, like, okay, I have a few kinks, therefore I have to have this deep-seated issue that has happened to me. Like, you can have the kinks without having that. I'm not saying that's going to make for interesting characters, but it just so happens to coincide with, like, Anastasia, no real trauma, not really into it. Christian and Layla, both deep-seated trauma. And then as we find out later, Jack Hyde, he also has his own issues growing up, and he also is into it. Like, everyone who's into it has some major issues with that.
Yeah. And which would be fine if the writing was at a level that was tackling that as a subject and saying, oh, let's explore this idea that people who have problematic pasts or troubled childhoods develop certain things that other people don't. Maybe is there a correlation there? Can we explore that? Can we explore why certain people feel this way? Again, go watch Secretary starring Maggie Gyllenhaal and James Spader, because that is actually a very strong story of someone discovering that they are into something and their dependency on it, and then sort of the growth that both of them have through their relationship. Is actually a very good little movie. I recommend it highly, actually. This, on the other hand, it's like, no, we just want a bunch of kinky stuff, and it just kind of feels like it's there because we have to have plot. You know, the fantasy is the main part. The fantasy is the whole point. It's just that, oh, we also have to have some plot, so here's some things that can happen. And I guess
I mean, you can, if we go back to how it was written fan fiction wise, you can tell that like every chapter had to have a sex scene in it. And some of the sex scenes, I'm sure, were cut from the movie and even from the book, just because they genuinely did not make any sense. But you can tell that, like, here's the beat. Here's this plot thread. We've opened it up. They've had an argument. They've fixed it. Sex. Move on to the next one. And that happens numerous times over the course of these movies.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's there is a lot of sex scenes, and a lot of them go on too long, and there's a lot of them with a lot of pop song playing as the sex is happening.
I'm not gonna fault the soundtrack much of anything. There are a couple songs that I'm personally just sick of, but they do. All of these sex songs have like a steamy sort of like very passionate feel to it, and then all of those, as you were saying, the boat ride songs, they all had just that like, man, everything's awesome when I'm with Christian Grey sort of feel to it. So I'm not gonna. The songs were well chosen. That's possibly the only positive I could say there. They
should go back and take all the boat ride songs as we're putting it. Take them out and just replace it with "Everything is awesome."
I mean, yeah, it would fit.
Thematically, it would fit. Yeah. No, like there's a lot of sex scenes. A lot of them go on too long. By the time I got to the third movie, I was just sick of seeing them do anything sex related. Like I was just sick of it.
Yeah, there was that scene in the third movie where they've gotten a huge fight, and Christian's in the shower, and then Anna comes up, tries to join him in the shower, and he just walks off, and I'm like, oh my god, do we have character development? What's going on here? It genuinely, it was, and then I think the exact opposite happens even later on in the movie, but it was just so interesting to see that, like, they denied a sex scene. They made sure to show her topless, because they're never giving up a chance to do that, but they at least denied the sex scene.
I mean, I think if you're agreeing to be in this trilogy, you just have to accept that that's happening. Like I feel like that was very clear when she signed up that you're going to be topless like a lot in this.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think that's the other problem, is that none of the sex scenes are that sexy. Like there's something very sterilized about them. Yeah, and part of it I think might be the lack of chemistry. I think that's part of it. I think part of it also might be because it is so, like, it's it's a Universal Pictures Hollywood produced movie. Like, yeah, based compared to a PG-13, sure, there's a lot more stuff going on, but it's never going to have like an edge to it. Which is really weird, given that they're in the Red Room, which is full of sex toys and kinky
I honestly
shit.
feel like that's probably what it is that it's they have to expose a general audience to all of these BDSM concepts, and if they can't really like go all in on it, which is why they have to just kind of sanitize it a little bit, make it just a bit more easy to take in. Like I feel like that's probably the whole explanation for it being a belt at the end of that first movie, is because, well, if we used like anything more than that, audiences would just be like completely turned off from the sexiness of it and would be more so into the, oh, this is actually pretty messed up side of it, because the general audience isn't going to be able to handle half of the stuff that is in the Red Room, period.
Yeah,
I'm honestly surprised with the Red Room that they did the whole like the crankshaft and the shackles holding up to the roof. That felt way too extreme for a general audience for me. But
I always joke that if you're going to be into all this BDSM stuff, like you need to be also be into DIY, because there's a lot of construction of putting these things, sex swings and all. So,
oh yeah.
You know how to use a drill is what I'm saying. So yeah, I'd recommend Secretary. No, admittedly, Secretary doesn't really have much in the way of like a apparatus, because it's more just the relationship and the attitude to each other, as opposed to let's whip out the flogger, let's whip out the so. But like again, that is a movie that not all the scenes. Some scenes are not meant to feel sexy; they're meant to feel uncomfortable. But there's some scenes that do legitimately feel like you can get why one or both of them are very aroused in this scene. They're filmed a certain way. The direction portrays the sexiness, and like, I mean, obviously it's very subjective, I suppose, in a way, how that functions. Like, it's not like porn is necessarily shot in a way to enhance it. It's just like you point the camera and the dirty stuff happens, and, it'll work or it won't, depending on your taste, and that's fine.
And I mean, that was back in the first movie with that different director-screenwriter combo. There was that montage sex scene I think was set to Your Love Make Me So Crazy Right Now cover. And it had some real artistry to it. There were a whole bunch of fast cuts, and there was a whole bunch of it made you feel the passionate of the scene. Like it made you understand that this is just a wild ride she's on. And I feel like in the later two movies, you never got that. Like they had 3 to 4 shots maybe, and then in my cuts they cut away. In yours, they probably kept going for an extra 20 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, like, even that first approach is a little subjective in the sense that I do think making it too glossy kind of takes away from the actual sexiness anyway. It kind of like just turns it into like this is the glossy magazine version of the thing, as opposed to like feeling real or feeling actually intimate. What's a good example? Like Chalmwick Park's The Handmaiden has a couple of scenes where it's about these two women who are falling in love, and it's kind of this forbidden relationship. And there's a scene in that where it's getting kind of raunchy. I think there's a toe sucking. I can't remember exactly what it was. It's been a while since I watched it now, but it's a really great film. But I remember like feeling that, like watching that scene and feeling how romantic and sexy it was without it ever feeling perverted that I was watching it, which is a really interesting balance to strike. Like being able to like, do that and make it feel genuine, intimate, erotic, but not like I'm perverse for witnessing it. And it felt like two characters who were really discovering something with each other, and it felt kind of beautiful. And here, and maybe a lot of it does come back again to not caring about the relationship because it's poorly written, not caring about the relationship because they have no chemistry, not caring about the relationship for a number of reasons that we've kind of pointed on. Maybe it all just comes back to that, but like every single time like they are doing kinky shit, it always just kind of feels awkward and stilted. And like I think there's a couple of moments towards the end of the third movie where it feels like she's kind of into it. The ending of the final shot of the third movie is her in like a corset, sort of being like, I'm ready to play now, Mr. Grey, come and spank me.
She's the one who sets up the room and tells him to go in there.
Yeah. So I mean, if anything, it's kind of, and I've not seen all of Grease, but I've always like critiqued Grease from a distance because the message of Grease seems to be, oh no, by the end of the movie, the female lead becomes what the guy wants, and that's the happy ending, and that seems problematic to me.
I was gonna make that comparison earlier, but I actually have like a different reading of Grease than I've heard your thing before.
I've not seen the whole thing, so I take it with a grain of salt. Like
that's entirely fine. But my reading of Grease has always been, and it's the same sort of thing in this movie, where the entire movie, pretty much, once Danny and Sandy end up meeting up, Danny almost immediately tries to become the kind of guy that Sandy wants, which is just like a sports star does whatever. And he like really makes some effort, but it is just not coming naturally for him. It's not something that he's easily able to do, but he does really, really try. And it's only by the end of the movie that Sandy finally gives an inch in the other direction as well, where she's willing to meet him halfway and like become easier to do that. That's the way I've always read it.
That sounds healthier, because I had no idea he was spending most of the movie trying to be what she wants. So I mean, he spent the whole thing trying out for like different sports and trying to be not the greaser engine head for the entire time. So yeah, that's the way I've always seen it. So it's less about her just becoming exactly what he wants and more just finally admitting that what you are is okay and I can accept that and get into it a little bit as well.
That's the way I've always read it. Of course, it's a movie. You can read it however.
Yeah, it's definitely healthier, that interpretation.
But that's also what I feel like is in this movie, is that the entirety of, once she breaks up with him at the end of that thing, it's basically like, no, I'm not going to do anything that you want. I'm not going to be that like submissive whatever. And then over the course of the movie, she understands more about him, sees that he is putting in the effort trying to do this. Occasionally he falters, of course, but by the end she comes to it and be like, you know what, I fell in love with you for you, so maybe I can give an inch on the other side as well. And I think that's a fine way to handle it. It's just that the rest of the movie doesn't lead to that narrative. The rest of the movie is just
there's a few muddy things with that as far as like saying it applies to this. One is that he is so controlling and demanding to start with that it doesn't feel like he deserves for her to give him an inch, because he is so headstrong in one direction to begin with.
Basically, if we just ignore the whole first movie and just pick up where they got back together in the second, because the first movie is just red flag central, where we should never have gotten to the second movie.
And secondly, like I think the reason that doesn't work for me in the context of this movie is that, to be honest, the entire time in the first movie, the second movie, and in the third movie, is that she's still into a lot of the things. She's still very willing. She's still up. She still gets into the talk where she's like, "Oh, I need to be punished, Mr. Grey." Like, when he gets mad about something, it's like, "Oh, He's like, did you just roll your eyes at me? Maybe I did. What are you gonna do about it? Like, she's kind of playing along and is into a lot of it anyway. So the ending where she's like, oh, she's put on a corset, so she looks more the part. She looks more like she's into this sex stuff. She's still just kind of been into what she's comfortable with the entire time. I don't really feel like she's been resisting it up until that point.
No, definitely not. It's not a one-to-one metaphor for sure, but it's. I'm basically, if we just ignore the whole first movie as a whole, because if you bring that into account, they should never have gotten together at all.
No. So yes.
So do we need to talk about the third movie, or can we just go straight to the hostage situation?
Hey, well, we haven't talked about the helicopter yet.
Oh, I forgot about the helicopter because it's so inconsequential to everything.
So yeah, like 3/4 into the second movie, he's in a helicopter with his assistant, and they're flying past a volcano.
I think it's just a mountain, but okay.
Yeah. Well, but they say volcano because she says it's going to erupt.
Okay,
yeah.
I missed that bit.
Yeah, because she says maybe this is the unrated cut extra. Maybe you didn't get this line, but she says, "Wait, that's an active volcano there. Like, what if it goes?" And she's like, "Well, you have a front row seat then, won't you?" Like, so I remember that. But
I guess
anyway,
the MPAA didn't like an active volcano line in this sex movie.
So yeah, but then just after they have this little moment, you just hear it bleep, 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 like, and it's like, oh, the chopper's going down. It's like, oh, brace yourself. And then we cut to everyone else, and Anastasia's with her friend. They find out that his helicopter went down, and we get like a couple of minutes of like the entire family and her at his place talking to security. We hear on the news there's search parties looking out for him because he's missing somewhere in the wilderness. And then a minute later, he just walks in from the elevator.
No. See, you skipped a bit there. You skipped a second. Because this is what really soured the whole scene for me. Is that in the half second before he walks through the door, they make sure to have the TV say, oh, it turns out they've been found and they're totally safe. And then he walks through the door.
True, yes.
And I'm like, you just cock-blocked your own surprise reveal. How do you manage that? All you had to do was have them just cut out that 1/2 second. They look over to the door and hey, there's Christian. And then, okay, fine, the TV can say it, whatever. But like at that point, why would you have it literally a half second before the reveal? That's like if you got a friend who's getting a surprise party and as your hand is on the doorknob, you say, by the way, you have a surprise party. And then you open the door. I don't know why. That really got to me though when I saw that. I was like, why did they even bother doing the whole, oh, Christian, you're alive. Yeah, the TV just said so.
I think my problem is just how easily he walks back in as if it's not a big deal.
Oh, yeah, no, he should be in the hospital. 2,000%.
I mean, this entire segment, right, baffles me. And obviously, I felt it a little bit with the other plots, but I don't think anything feels more random in this second movie than he's in it. Because I'm thinking, okay, they're in the helicopter. It's just going to be about the conversation. It's an expensive conversation shoot for some, for what might be like a bit of dialogue we need. But fine. They're in the helicopter. They're talking, and then we start getting the warning lights, and we see the black smoke, and it's like, okay, they're going to go down. And I'm like, what is this? Why? Because at this point as well, it's a 2-hour movie, and I know that there's like maybe 20 minutes at most left. Why is this now a plot beat this year? Now, they do actually retroactively add something to it in the third movie when they say it was sabotage and it wasn't an accident, but
I mean, but that's the same thing they did with the crazy girl with Layla, is that they explicitly say that while they were down at that trip in Georgia with the mother, that Layla showed up at the apartment and slit her wrists in front of the maid.
But they never mentioned that in the first movie.
They never mentioned it when they came back. That has nothing to do with anything else.
Oh, Jesus. So I mean, I had to mention that. I mean, the end of the movie is Christian. After Anna yells at Mrs. Robinson, Christian decides to take her to a little nook and cranny and proposes to her. And we end with fireworks after she said yes.
Yes.
And evil Jack Hyde is watching from a distance, brooding because he's going to do something bad.
Burning a cigarette through a picture of Christian. Just in case you were unsure of his motives.
I'll be honest, I was shocked the third movie started with them just finishing the wedding. I thought there was going to be build up to, I thought like picking the wedding dress.
No.
Like I thought there'd be drama at the wedding.
honestly, I still have the timeline open here, and looking at it, it says here that like they basically open up on that for the most part. It says narration begins. There's a camera. There's a nightmare, and then yeah. In fact, you know what? I'm pretty sure that the entire wedding was told in flashback. They don't even open up there. They open up at the arson scene in the book.
The arson scene?
The one where Jack Hyde sets fire to the server room or whatever at the very beginning.
Right, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So it cuts, like, when they're at their wedding, it intercuts to scenes of, it turns out to be Jack, but it's like, it's like a masked individual with gloves on, like, with a key card breaking into a server room somewhere, and I'm like, why is there like a spy movie like all of a sudden intersecting with this? What's going on?
Christian Grey.
Oh dear. Yeah, so plots in the third movie.
Yeah. I mean, it's honestly a couple of smaller ones, but for the most part, it's just two big ones, I feel like.
Yes.
Maybe three, how you want to swing it.
I mean, I guess we'll mention that, so the woman that the best friend is concerned that the brother character might be cheating on her with
Yes.
is an architect. And Christian has bought a house for Anastasia in the wilderness that's next to a river, which I think they flew past or sailed past in a previous movie.
Yeah, they sailed past and they were like, wow, that's a beautiful house. And he's like, okay, all right, mental note on that one.
Yes. I bought the airline. So
seemed like a good idea at the time.
So this woman shows up, and there's a couple of lines, I don't know if it's before this scene or after this scene, where when this woman's brought up by the best friend, they talk about her big boobies, right?
They say she's got huge plans for the house.
I thought it'd be funnier just to say boobies. But yes.
Fair enough.
Yes, but they're talking about her massive tight Bojangles, which... but like they're sort of like complaining about her and stuff, but we're at this scene, and so this is the weird thing. Christian has bought her this house, and has hired this architect, and the architect immediately talks about ripping the whole thing down to rebuild a brand new house. And I'm like, Christian, when you bought her this house as a gift to say this is where we can live now, did you not think that she would like the house because this is the house it is, and not because the plot of land that it's
Boy, it's like when you only date for 2 months before you get married. It's like you don't even know the person. It's weird.
So here's some agency from Anastasia if you want. So they give us a scene here where when they're all talking to each other, this woman, and I love that it's like a hot blonde, because I think that's kind of intentional, because Anastasia's not a blonde, right? They're going for the opposite here.
Right.
And this woman is touching Christian on the shoulder. She's laughing at him or his jokes. She's being really flirty in front of her. And when Christian walks out the room to go take a phone call or something, Anastasia leans in. She puts her hand with the ring on the table so she can see it. It's like, I'm putting this out there. And she's like, take your eyes off my husband or we'll find a different architect, you bitch. Right? I mean, it was longer than that, but that was the gist of the conversation. And it was her like saying, yeah, like, I am Mrs. Grey and you will take your eyes off my husband and you will not act like this. And she sort of like tries to like feign ignorance. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And it's when Christian comes back out and asks if there's a, just before he gets close enough, she just sort of mouths very quickly, it won't happen again, Mrs. Grey.
Well, that's the one moment in that scene I love, is that she's like, look, Anna, I didn't mean, she's like, you can call me Mrs. Grey.
Yes.
Just doubling down on the whole. And honestly, that's the first part, and I'll talk about it as we get more into it, but that's the first part of, I think this is Anna's best movie in terms of actually doing stuff. Like, she's finally become a character in this movie. Like, I know what she wants here.
Yeah, she gets to resolve things, so naturally there's just a bit more for her to do with. And or even just the sense that, like, that's very scene actually, before it, when they're going the way to the house, she's like, oh, can I drive? And he's like, oh, you're not driving this car, because it's like a fancy sports car. And when they're leaving, which, first of all, this was weird, Christian clearly understood everything that happened, even though he wasn't in the room. And he's like, if you can handle her, you can handle this car. And I'm like, that is a shitty line. Who wrote that line? You are a hack. You're a goddamn hack.
That was E.L. James or her husband.
Right, so first of all, that's a problem. But the idea that he's letting her drive, it's like, okay, they're married now, so he's like opening up more of the stuff to her. Like, okay, now he accepts that she can do this. Although, very different subject. We're on the beach, and it's like a beach where a lot, they're in Paris. A lot of people are topless, and she's like, I'm just gonna go topless, and he's like, no, you're not going topless. No one's looking at you. No one's staring at you, right? And he comes back from being away, and she's actually just went topless in his absence. And he's like, what the hell are you doing? He throws a towel on her. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. I must have turned around whilst I was asleep. And
I mean, no, continue.
I was just going to say, this is more of him being possessive and controlling and jealous and, everything he's been since the first movie.
I mean, for that one scene, I can understand more because he does justify it as, like, he's the kind of guy who's in, like, tabloids and who's in, like, all the People magazine or whatever. And if any photographer manages to capture the new Mrs. Grey topless on a beach, they're going to sell that to those tabloids. And he outright says that. I
will concur that he has a better reason for this than he typically... I mean, I still buy that he's just jealous, to be honest, and that's just...
definitely.
That's a convenient reason, but I will give you that the reason is at least understandable, because
it's a better reason that he's better reason he gives than any other reason he gives throughout the rest of this movie.
Or trilogy.
No, the rest of the movies, I at least am willing to, like, ignore most of his stuff, because he doesn't really ever give reasons. He just does things, and he's just like, it's who I am, Anna.
So don't touch me. You're saying that they've advanced to the point where he's willing to at least give a reason for things in the relationship.
Yeah. He's willing to justify why he's such an awful person.
Yes, no awful husband.
Yes. Oh, she snagged him. That's fantastic.
No, well, actually, the thing it's like a couple of scenes later when they're having dinner, and she cracks the pregnancy joke, and he's like, "Oh, wait, do you want to have kids?" He's like, "Well, someday, but I want to, give you everything first. I want to live a married couple life first." And she keeps sort of pushing, and he's kind of like acting weird about it, and it's like, that does feel like something you should have talked about first. And this is the thing. As soon as this conversation comes up, I roll my eyes and go, well, I guess I know what's happening by the end of this movie then.
I was on pins and needles. I had no idea. It was the biggest shock of the century.
She gets a call from her doctor at one point, and she's like, you've been missing appointments, Anna. And I'm like, oh, God, she's already pregnant. Like, we're already doing this. Like,
of course.
It's so telegraphed and just... And, she tells him she's pregnant. And, again, getting back to all those red flags we talked about before, his reaction to this is anger. He's mad that she forgot to take her birth control. He gets angry and says, I wanted to give you the world, not shits and diapers and, vomit. And I'm like, his reaction to this is like... as close, I won't say the worst case scenario when like women are worried about the reaction of like telling the boyfriend about an accidental pregnancy, because I'm sure some can be violent or some can, there's definitely worse, but this is pretty on the far end of like at least verbally what a reaction would be, of like being worried if they're going to be happy, sad, upset, scared, whatever, how angry, sad, scared are they going to be.
Right.
This is like, he gets angrier than we've seen him. Anything.
Definitely. I mean, this is just going beyond the fourth wall for a second here. This is the point, roughly, where they found out that they got the publication deal, that they were going to be putting this all into a book series and need to be compiled or whatever. So I feel like this is the point, introducing the pregnancy, because I feel like that's like the long game of where the story was always going to head. I feel like this is the point where they're like, okay, we got to start wrapping up loose threads here. We got to start getting this whole thing down, because I'm not going to be continuing the fan fiction past the publication point. So she just wrapped up the pregnancy thing, or at least got it going because it's something that she wanted to do. And then his reaction immediately leads into the hostage situation, which then defines why he's not around, or like why it's such a difficult moment or whatever. And then the whole thing just wraps up at the end. So this fight is really just the beginning of the end of the whole story. It's the beginning of what I guess you could consider the third act, but it's more so just this part probably should have been really its own book instead of the stupid stuff before with like, we're going to Aspen so that way we can whatever. I honest to God, I can't even remember what happened in Aspen. I know there was the proposal for the friend, but like other stuff happened. It was a long sequence.
Yeah, I mean, well, he basically she complains because they know they're being stalked by Jack, right? And so she's got a bodyguard throughout the movie, and that's like there a lot, and there's a lot of little jokes with him and like other people thinking he's hot and so on and so on. Yeah. But she wants to go out with her best friend who she's had since the first movie, having some drinks. She told Christian she'd go straight home after work because it's dangerous, and she went there instead. Yes. And Christian is pissed about this, and the fight reveals that she's like, look, I've not seen any of my friends since we got married because it was just always me and you, and you know I do want to see them still. They're still part of my life, blah blah blah. So he surprises her with the trip, but then when she gets on the plane, it's like, oh no, all your friends are coming. This is a friends and family trip because his brother's coming as well, and his sister, and obviously Jose, poor Jose. And it's not like Jose's got a shot with Christian's sister because there's the one other single person on the plane.
Yeah, although I did notice while they were hiking, she did have her hands on Jose's shoulder. Okay, Jose wasn't reacting, but
you think that's the subtlest hints that there's something going on.
No, I think they revel too much in Jose's pain to ever give him true happiness.
That's probably true. So that happens, and yeah, while they're there, like basically Anna sees Christian's brother with the blonde across the street, and they're not kissing, but they're I mean, actually kisses him on her cheek maybe, but not like they're not making out or anything. But there's a lot of touching of the arms, there's a hug, and it's like, oh, is this something suspicious or not? And she intentionally distracts her friend so she won't see it across the street whilst they're trying on, I think, dresses, I think. Yeah. But then it turns out that he's just been planning to propose, which he does at the club later. And then later that same night, or earlier that same night, I can't remember which way it is. This is in the unrated cut. Someone bumps into one of the girls and like is mildly threat. I can't even remember what starts it, but Christian fights the guy and punches him a couple of times, and that's basically it. There's a joke as well. See when they're at the big house they're staying at in Aspen, where Christian starts playing the piano and starts singing, and Anna's like enjoying it, and then Christian's brother and sister walk up and they're just looking in like awe, and she turns and goes, "Wait, what's so shocking?" He's like, "Have you never seen him play the piano before?" It's like, "We've never heard him sing before." And he's like singing, and it's like he's been singing his whole life. Like he's sitting there.
He's perfectly on pitch because he's Mr. Perfect who could do anything.
Yes,
he sets his mind to.
So it's this idea that she's improving him because there's these sweet things coming out about him to everyone else that they've never seen. So she is actively making him a better person. You know, the fantasy. You know, to go back to it again. So that's what happened at Aspen. I don't remember anything else.
You say so.
I don't remember.
I'll take your word on it. But then again, it just feels like we get back from Aspen and then none of it mattered. We don't bring up any of those plots, any of the things. Like, we never see the friend and the brother ever again.
No, we don't, I don't think. Maybe... No, I don't think
no,
we do.
Never. Nothing that we never see any of our friends again, to be honest. I don't think there's a single one.
We see his sister again because she's the hostage.
Oh, no, the sister, yes. The family, yes. But even then, like, you could have put anyone in that chair. You could have put the mom, you could have put anyone in that chair, and it would have been like, oh my god.
Now that I'm thinking about it, it's
should have put Jose in the chair.
It's kind of weird that we don't even see the brother again to react, because it was also his sister that got kidnapped. Like, he should be caring about this. So there's a couple of scenes throughout, because the big main plot really is the Jack stuff, which is him coming after them, and he actually gets arrested halfway through the movie because he's in the house.
You say halfway. I feel like that was like a third. Maybe it was pretty early on.
He's in the place. I think it's when she goes back from the bar with a friend.
Yes, it is. That is it.
And he's already there, but the two security guards take him down. It's not a huge deal necessarily. But he gets out on bail, which Anna goes to like see this happen. So he stares at her in the way.
Well, see, all right, but here's the tilt on that.
Yes.
The bail scene was immediately before the scene where they reveal that she's pregnant. And I mean, like, immediately before. I genuinely think, and I'm just speculating here, that Jack was just gone. Like, he was arrested. He was completely gone. He was not a problem to the main characters at all after that point. But then they were like, oh, we have to wrap this up now. Like, I'm getting a publishing deal. So I need to get a main antagonist going for this last little hurrah. The only one I've established is currently in jail. So how can I get him out right now? I feel like that's the only reason they had that whole subplot of him being out on bail.
Yeah. So he gets out on bail. He actually makes, like, at least... Does he make a threatening phone call before he calls her with the hostage thing?
No. The hostage thing is the first time.
Okay. Well, he calls her. And at this point, you know, Christian has gotten drunk with his ex-mistress after the pregnancy reveal. He comes back.
They've had a huge fight because
Anastasia feels betrayed because he went and confided in her, so that's like cheating on her. Which I don't necessarily disagree with. Like, I see your point there, but like, but they have this big fight, so they're in a really rocky place, and that's when around here she gets the call, oh, I've kidnapped Christian's sister, and we actually cut to a shot of her in a chair with like her gagged and like rope around her arms. And do you know what? I like a better writer and director would have actually done something here to point out the irony that the first time we met Christian, not this first scene, but the second scene was in the hardware store. He was buying like tape and rope.
Yeah.
You could have done some sort of weird like bookending like irony with this.
I mean, not to jump the gun on this, but they kind of did in that like last scene where they found out more information about Jack Hyde's past. In that Jack was in the same foster home or system or whatever as Christian.
The coincidence that he was actually in the same, like they were connected at some point in their past was laughable to me. But
definitely. That's just like retconning the Batman origin, where it's just like, oh yeah, and it turns out there were like 800 people in that alley that all were connected to this somehow. But no, it's the one comment he made where he's like, if I wasn't adopted by my parents, would I have ended up the same way Jack was? And I feel like that's the moment of introspection that should have gone with the irony of the reveal there, but they delayed it too much in that case.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you do. I don't know if like because this is the thing. See, when they eventually arrive at the scene of the crime, right? And you know, poor Christian's sister, because Christian gets out of the car and goes, hey, bodyguard, go deal with my sister. I'm going to check my wife. But don't get me wrong, it makes sense that he would want to check his wife first. But I can also just imagine the sister sitting there going like, I'm the one tied up. I'm the one gagged. I'm the one who was kidnapped.
Yeah, but she's on the ground.
True, yes.
That's the key. Also, can we just talk about for a second?
Let me make this point, because I'll forget it. I'll forget it if I don't.
You're fine. Go
what
ahead.
they should have done is that Christian should have been the one to go over to untie her, and give him a moment when he goes to undo the rope and like take the gag out. Like, have him just sort of realize what he's doing. Like, have him like sort of acknowledge that he's taken off rope. This is his sister who is tied and gagged, and this is what he does to people with consent. But this is essentially what he does to people for fun, for pleasure.
Yeah. I feel like that joke was played slightly differently, but it was in the beginning of the movie when Jack was first apprehended. They were like, oh, we got to restrain him. And he's like, I don't have anything to restrain him with. And she's like, we do. I mean,
yes,
we can find something.
Yeah, we have plenty of restraining items. She's like, yeah, we have like a collection of handcuffs. Which pair would you like to use? Would you like the furry ones?
God, I really wanted them. I don't know if they actually showed. I don't think they did show Jack and how he was escorted out, but I really hoped it was like pink rope or something like that.
That would be very funny. But yeah, this whole hostage thing is just like, all of a sudden, Anna's told not to tell Christian or the police, and to collect $5 million and then deliver it to him. And so we get this sequence that is out of a different movie where she's going to a bank to withdraw $5 million, and she's like, and it's her own money because, you know, they're married now. She has the right to take out this money. Account. Although the bank manager calls and checks her husband, which felt like really sexist to me.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. Like, you can make the argument that if it's a joint account and both people are jointly on it, if that big of a sum is taken out, that everyone has to be on board. But it does come across more as, no, it's we have to consult the husband to make
Yes.
sure that this is okay.
Like, yeah, like if there was just a line that said like, no, if it's over like say 100 grand, like we have to like confirm with the other party. It's just the standard protocol or stuff. If they'd said something like that, but it really played like you're his new wife, and it feels like you're being really dodgy right now, asking for this in cash, which is suspicious. Don't get me wrong. Like walking in and saying I want 5 million in cash is a bit suspicious. But it kind of feels like she's doing a runner. And Christian does, when he talks to her on the phone, he's like, "Are you leaving me? Are you running away?"
Yeah, and that's my one problem with this whole thing is I know throughout the entire thing, Jack seems a bit like omniscient, like he seems to know everything that's going on. But I feel like in a private phone call in a bank where you're talking to Christian, she should have been able to say, "Hey, Jack's got your sister. I'm taking this money to him."
Yeah, like for some reason she thinks that even this is being monitored somehow.
Right. And that's the point where I'm like, okay, don't call the police, fine, whatever. I can accept that in any movie. Like, you just need a reason to be personally involved in the situation. But it takes a lot for me that despite the fact that this, like if it was, I don't know, Jose or like her best friend, fine, whatever. I can accept that. But it's his sister. He has a very large stake in this. Yeah. And he should be informed.
And this is the thing where she just kind of goes quiet after a bit with the questions. And doesn't respond to him, and he just kind of gets that something's wrong, she's in trouble. So he tells the bank manager, give her whatever she wants, whatever she needs, and then he like calls the bodyguard, he calls whoever and says, look, she's in trouble, like we need to do something, blah blah blah. And they're on their way to help, sort of thing. Which, don't get me wrong, like, okay, you're establishing that he knows her well enough at least that he is reading the situation correctly and is understanding that she's doing this in some way under duress, right? There's something fishy about this, but it's not because she's just being, you know, this money grabbing, oh, I now I can run away with your money kind of thing. Like that's not what's happening right now.
No, of course not.
So fair enough, right? Like that's something, I suppose. So we then get, you know, this sequence where she gets into a car with the woman who works at the publishing place, who were like, is she like an ally of Jack? It turns out later she's been blackmailed because when he assaulted her, he filmed it and is using that footage as blackmail material. And apparently he's done this to all of his assistants, which means that not only was she going to get assaulted, he was going to have blackmail material on Anastasia as well. So it's retroactively making that even, you know, slimier, I suppose.
Oh yeah, no, he's the worst.
Actually, which reminds me of a scene that we do have to mention that I've forgotten to talk about. Is earlier on I mentioned Anna was driving the fancy sports car. Something happens while she's doing that I think is worth mentioning. So they're being tailed by a vehicle, and Christian says, "Lose him." So we get a car chase. Anastasia Gray now is in a car chase sequence where she's like trying to duck and dive between traffic, and it's you know, the absurdity of the moment of like, what is this scene? What is this movie all of a sudden? Like, I guess the way I would describe this is that it's supposed to be this romantic drama, maybe erotic romantic drama, even more of a particularly. And it's supposed to be full of these tense little sexual moments. It's meant to be full of this character drama stuff, maybe the psyche being explored and all that. But there's all these just individual plot lines and segments that are shoehorned into the sequels especially that feel like, oh, now we're you know, someone might be dead from a helicopter crash. Oh, now we've got an antagonist and there's car chases. Oh, now there's a hostage situation.
Yeah, I feel like this is an adaptational issue where, because it was based off Twilight had this inherent fantastical element to it. So you can understand, like, okay, there's this long-running war between vampires and werewolves, and of course it escalates at a certain point, and you're just, because you're a part of this world, you are subject to this fantastical fight scene. This movie is set in reality, so you can't really have those fantastical things just come along normally. So it's just a normal life for 90% of it, and then they're like, oh, but at this point in Twilight there was a super cool war going on. I guess I'll crash a helicopter.
Yeah, and there's also that thing, because obviously Jack kind of becomes the replacement for this in the second movie at a certain point. But in Twilight, like, immediately because Edward likes Bella, all of a sudden there's a lot of evil vampires that want to kill her. So there's a legitimate danger to her, like, the entire time. in 50 Shades of Grey, like, Christian is just naturally protective and scared that something will happen to her, even when there's no threat yet.
Right, exactly.
And eventually there is some threats, because there's, this ex-girl, there's obviously Jack's the main one for a lot of it, but it takes a while to get there. So there is a portion of that first movie in particular where he is very protective and worried that something will happen to her, when there's very little reason to think or suggest that there would be anyone gunning for her.
Exactly. It's the issue. And even the characters that are meant to be the antagonists, I mean, I think that having Elena, the Mrs. Robinson character, being an antagonist in whatever limited way she was acceptable. It's someone from the past. It's someone who's still been around. There's reason to not like her. I think that's fine. But then you have a girl who went through, like, severe trauma and is still in love with Gray and is willing to kill over it. And then you have a jilted fiction editor for a publishing house that literally set fire to a server room and crashed a helicopter. Like, at a certain point, these aren't people anymore.
No, he's a supervillain. He's a very
exactly.
He's a very incompetent supervillain, because
he's the worst.
He immediately fails at everything once it gets to a certain point. Like,
and honestly, can we just look at his plans here? His first plan was crash the helicopter. His second plan was set fire to the server rooms. Both things he pretty much completely got away with. His third plan was break into the apartment, wait for the person who has known security guards, and then just try to walk through the front door. All in all, not a good sequence of plans there.
Yes. And then what does he think is going to happen that he's going to get away with? Because clearly, when Anna shows up with the money, and she has a little switcheroo with her phone so that they can still track her, and that's how they know where she is. But, it's very clear that he had no intention of just walking away with the money. He was going to kidnap, possibly kill, whatever, to Anna, right? Out of revenge, out of some sexual desire, whatever it may be.
I think his last line in the movie is that he doesn't care about the money.
Yeah. Because the other woman's like, you said you wouldn't kill her. She's like, she's not dead. Yet.
Not yet.
So it's like, so how did you think you were going to get away with this? You have a motive. You've already been arrested for, like, breaking into their home and, like, coming after her. And there's a point in the middle where, like, he's apparently trying to say that they were having an affair, and that Anna's lying about everything, and she decided to, like, change her story to make him look bad. And, it's the typical, like, asshole thing, right? Of, like, just lying and saying, oh, she was leading me on, so on and so on.
Yeah.
And, like, you could have almost, like, this was almost an interesting place to maybe do something and have a conversation about that. Like, having maybe Christian react more to the idea that, not that he wouldn't believe her, because he knows the truth and whatnot, but just the idea that Christian would have to deal with the fact that she is being victimized like this, and his money can't necessarily deal with the problem. Because that's the other thing I think I have an issue with in the entire series, is that he effectively can just throw money at every problem and it'll solve it.
I mean, that's the whole thing, is that in Twilight, it was Edward being a vampire, using all the vampire powers to fix it. In this, they're rich. So all the problems have to be solvable with some level of money.
Yeah. And so much of it is like, because even all this, it's like, well, they solve all this because he has like 5 bodyguards who are working with him and taking him down, and he has a direct line to the police. Because I think at one point when they get the information of where they are, the bodyguard just says, "Hey, dispatch, did you get that?" And I'm like, you're online with the police, like, constantly, like, dispatch.
Like, I can understand having a police scanner, but having the ability to directly call them is like a whole nother. And that's half the thing throughout all of the movies. Like, he has these private investigators following around potential submissives, doing full dossiers on them. The whole thing with Jack Hyde, like, it's obvious he did go to jail. Like, he did end up in jail for the sexual assault in the office. However, the first line of defense was not the police. We did not call 911 for Jack Hyde. He just sent up his bodyguards to do something. It is never shown what, but clearly he has his own personal level of muscle that is, like, completely separate and somehow above police recognition here. Which, again, maybe that's part of being rich. I don't know. I'm sitting here living in a one-bedroom apartment.
The sad part, I don't know if it's that specific, but the sad part is, like, rich people have power that they maybe shouldn't have, and that might be
I would love to see this movie, the third act of the third movie, just it all takes place during the Occupy Wall Street movement, and Christian has to just like deal. Like, I would love to see them play with that.
He would just turn into John McClane, like because this writer wants him to be perfect, so he would just turn into a perfect action hero. That's all would happen.
He would immediately be the hero of the people that everybody loves.
Yeah. So, and after this, it's like Christian, because she's been kicked and she shoots the bad guy in the leg. He's like, careful, she's pregnant, and she's been rushed out of hospital for her injuries, and the baby survives, and he's like, I'm so sorry, Anna, I just wasn't ready to like admit that this is what I wanted, but I will have this baby with you, blah blah blah. And then the movie, we said it ends with her like sort of saying, hey, get to the red room. Before this happens, there's a moment where she's staring at something, and she has the montage that goes through the highlights of the 3 movies of all the romantic moments, and it ends with her smiling, and then we get the actual final little beat. And like this montage is like so ineffective because all it did was remind me how little chemistry there was in every single interaction they've ever had.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. For a montage like this, you have to show the romantic moments. You can't show the sexy moments. This is a romantic montage. I genuinely think they exhausted every single one of them. And even then, the last shot in the montage was the exchanging of the rings, which happened at the beginning of this movie. This is not a montage of the previous 2. This is a montage including this one as well.
Yeah, well, there's several scenes from this movie in this montage.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, did you forget to put romance in your romantic movie, guy?
It's a very shallow perception of romance is, I think, is the problem.
Yeah.
Everything about it is very shallow, so it all reads as very phony. So if you don't have if you don't have the writing to make it feel romantic, then and you don't have the chemistry, which is what saves a lot of other movies, perhaps. You're left with nothing. You're left with 2 characters that are being forced together because it's what the script says is supposed to happen, not because they feel that they belong together, not because anyone really would root for them to be together. I think from an outsider perspective, and I feel this way in Twilight as well, where I'm just constantly going, this is the wrong choice. This should end with you realizing you shouldn't be with this person, but somehow we keep going down this path. Actually, this is the perfect way, especially as it started as fan fiction, this is the perfect way to describe this, right? The romance in this movie, the character relationship between Christian Grey and Anastasia Steele, is the feeling I get from the writer writing this is that she's the person who ships characters in other things and is mad that they don't get together, and that's the pair she wants to get together. This movie is someone writing a story around 2 characters they want to get together, but almost no one else experiencing the fiction itself actually feels that they should be together. But this one person, because they get to ship their own characters, because it's her characters, they will be together no matter what, even though it doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I see that. It's strange because that's so many movies where it is just the people who like clash and they don't get along and stuff like that, but then in the end they end up together. You could put that as the same thing, but there is at least the issue that you said throughout is the lack of chemistry, is that there is nothing that watching this movie we feel like these 2 people genuinely love each other.
Yeah, and to be fair, like what you just compared it with is like there's good examples of that, there's bad examples. It's an overdone thing, but
yeah,
there can be craft in that. It can be witty. Opposites do attract, and it tends to not be as extreme as what they are in this movie.
No, yeah.
It was I think a point to make, but also just generally speaking, at least there is some craft to that, and that you could at least have some fun with what the differences are, with how they clash. Like when it's done well, and you have characters that fight. The moment they kiss, for example, where maybe they're having a fight and they kiss in the middle of the fight, and that's when they realize, oh shit, this is a thing.
Yeah,
like it's overdone, don't get me wrong, but there's definitely examples where it works, and then usually afterwards you get this awkward kind of chemistry of like, well, okay, there's all that passion, and the reason why the fights had chemistry is because we have chemistry, so therefore the romance on some level also has chemistry, and is more entertaining than say, oh, the person who was handpicked to be your love interest from clearly the plain dude who was like there as the red herring character, if you will. But this is kind of this weird thing where Christian is the plain dude, but he's also the exciting opposite dude as well, and it doesn't really work.
Yeah, I mean it's an issue of just you've gotten too. You had an idea for your own original characters, but because you were basing them off these Twilight things, it was just a muddled mess of like, okay, I have to make these characters fantastical, but I also have to keep them in the real world. And I feel the way that she went about it is just poor.
It's like I was saying earlier about like Christian has to be protective because Edward was protective of Bella.
Right. She was basically handicapping herself to start with by making them Twilight fanfic, and in trying to keep that going, because again, that first movie, even through 2 adaptations from fanfic to book and book to movie, it's still just Twilight for like 2/3 of it, just a 1-to-1. So it's upsetting in that regard, because again, maybe if she had just come up with original characters and not stuck to the template, she could have done something that actually did have some chemistry to it. I also do think that because this book, this movie series as a whole, was made because it was just a worldwide sensation, and they needed it done as fast as humanly possible before it wore off.
Oh yeah, because this was not going to have a long shelf life in terms of pop culture.
I mean, even now, when was the last time you heard anyone mention this movie?
Other than us?
Yeah.
I mean,
other than the times I forced you to watch it.
Not a lot, certainly.
Exactly.
It doesn't come up that whole much. And
exactly.
What's so weird about it is that other than the addition of the more explicit sex stuff, which can only be even that explicit because it's like a Hollywood movie, even if it's R-rated, is that like the original thing she's fanfic thing, it's like that was already a fantasy wish fulfillment thing anyway that has a lot of the same problems from a writing perspective. So it's really weird that it's not like Bella and Edward didn't get together in that story. It's not like that wasn't the result she wanted in the first place. She's just recreating the same thing, just with a more spanking and flogging.
I feel like that is a fanfic thing. I feel like 95% of all fanfics that have a romantic plot are just like 50% sex throughout the whole thing.
That seems about right.
So that's just a media thing.
Yeah, and like I say, the sex is so boring, and I was so sick of it so quickly, and to the point where even in the first movie, there's a point where I think they have sex on a pool table towards the end.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
And I just remember thinking, another one. Like, you don't have to show me, right? I get it. Like we've established this at this point that they're doing this. We don't have to show it.
I mean, the only thing that I think that it applied to was the fact of they made a point of saying like they got pregnant because they were having sex so much. But even in that regard, you only need to have sex once.
Yes.
Like, that's not something where it's like, oh, we did it 250 times in the 6 weeks that we've been together.
Yeah.
Therefore, you're pregnant.
It's not like you partially impregnate someone over the course of 10 sessions. Like,
you don't get to pause the download of the file and then pick it up again some other time.
Yeah, it's not like, like inside it's like, okay, that's 13% done. Come back later and add some more sperm.
Yeah,
like that's not how it works.
Another 12 fluid ounces and we should be good.
Yes, doesn't take an incredible amount of sperm. Just takes one.
But yeah, no, I in terms of the whole trilogy, looking back on it, I think the first movie artfully, like, it looks the best. I think it has the best editing, the best flow. I think that it's actually managing to keep the characters like we said, it's just sort of a plot beat, and they don't overlap that much. But I think the first movie does the best job of allowing it to overlap a bit further than it otherwise would. Second movie is completely trash. There's nothing I like about that movie. The most I like about it is laughing at the fact that, oh yeah, no, we're just, after all of these scenes that don't matter, a helicopter crash, sure, why not? And then when it comes to the third movie, the only reason I like that one more than the second is because, A, that third act is off the wall. There is no reason that any of that should be there, and I love it. But B, because my biggest issue, I think, is how much I disliked having to associate through Anna's eyes when she has had nothing to do. This is the first movie that's actually given her something to do. So if I had to rate them in order, it would be first movie, third movie, second movie. But it's all very close to the bottom regardless.
Yeah, I didn't really think about what the ordering would be for me. Like, ultimately, it doesn't matter all that much.
Of course not.
I mean, I would agree the first one is technically the best, but like not in any way that makes me say I enjoyed anything or wanted to revisit it, or
it's like rating the best splinters you can get in your finger.
It's still a very poor experience for a number of reasons. You know, like we talked about the lack of chemistry, but then you add on the actual red flags and then the actual things where the whole time I'm going, you shouldn't be with him. This is a horrible choice outside of potentially all the money you'll get from him. But other than that, it's a terrible choice. So it's you know it's a very cynical movie to watch because you can feel the like, you know, a fantasy is a fantasy and that's fine, but because it's been presented as a movie, because it's been presented without any sort of real arc for the main character, it does kind of feel like the creators behind it are really childish in their approach to this, and or at least very shallow in their approach to this. Maybe that's a fairer statement.
Yeah.
And as a result, like I find that first film like just a really soulless and really self-indulgent experience. And then I mean the self-indulgence gets even worse, sadly, with the second two, but yeah, I'd probably rank them in the same order, but like honestly, like if I'm rating them out of 10, which I think we should,
okay,
you know, like just hit them in order, you know, first, second, third, like what's your out of 10?
I don't know. I mean, if we're going by a baseline of like 5 is an average movie of just I didn't like it, I didn't hate it, then I guess I would put the first movie at like a 4. I put the third movie closer to like a very low 3, and then the second movie I would put at a 1.5 to 2. Somewhere in there. So in order, 4, 1.5 to 2, low 3.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm going to be a bit harsher on the first and go 3 out of 10.
Okay.
And then I think I'm going to be more consistent on the others. I agree the third act of the third movie is hilarious, and I was cackling a lot during it. But the first like 2/3 or so of that movie were just more the second movie, and that was painfully dull. So I'm going to just rate them both equally a 2 out of 10. So 3, 2, 2 is my cross.
You got to make me have the highest rating of a 50 Shades movie.
I think that makes sense. So this has been a special edition movie review.
Yes.
David pops up from time to time on the odd one-off thing. I'm sure he'll be back at some point. So
yep.
Yes. Say
whatever I force you to watch next time.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll need like a co-host for Batman or something. I have no idea. But yeah. You'll say no to that if I
mean, I don't know. I might be busy.
I mean, I feel like Matt might want to dust off the old movie mic for that, but
I mean, it is a big deal, but yeah.
But he may not want to, so maybe you'll be called upon. Maybe the David signal will be lit in the sky. But yes, of course, you can support everything by liking, subscribing, dinging the bell for notifications. If you've seen the 50 Shades movies, by all means, comment below and tell us what you think. I will take this time to thank the Patreon producers for the month. So thank you to Tyler Hess and the Palacios. Oh, look at that, David Short. Board Now, Christopher Moy, David Brown, Al Treisman, and Alison M. Fordyce. You can support us over there for as little as $1 per month and get some bonus content and keep everything coming. So go and have a look and see if you're interested. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. That is the show. That has been the 50 Shades trilogy. Maybe there'll be more special editions of random things in time. I don't know, but hopefully stuff that's better than this and more interesting than this. But I can't deny
it. If so, I'm not paying for it. Sure,
that's fine. Yes, you don't have to pay for the good stuff. Funny enough, the good stuff I want to watch. I'm all about the good stuff.
You're so spoiled over there.
I have to watch 50 Shades 3 today, and then Alone in the Dark, directed by Uwe Boll. So don't you give me shit about me being spoiled.
All right.
Thank you for joining us here in Mail Fuzz Movies. I have been Peter, that has been David. And the only thing left to really ask... I mean, normally I'd end with, if you can get it, it's always good to have diplomatic immunity. That's my usual general movie outro, but I think instead I'm just going to ask David, what the fuck are you wearing?
Nipple clamps.